Hi and good afternoon and good morning to those on the other side of the Atlantic, but good afternoon for everyone who's in Europe. A warm welcome from the Public Affairs Council's European Office. It's Andras Banet speaking, and I have the pleasure to welcome here Joao.
Hello.
And virtually Karen on the other side of the Atlantic.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you? Thank you very much for coming. Karen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And it's great to have our very first European Membership Orientation webinar, which we thought might be helpful mostly to European audiences because while we are doing everything that our colleagues in the U.S. are doing, or at least we're trying to, we do give it a European spin, a European taste, and a European perspective. So this is what we're going to present to all those on the call, and we're recording this webinar, so the recording is just as available afterwards to present what exactly we are offering to our global membership, but especially looking at it from a European perspective and from our European office's perspective, the kind of programs, services, and topics that we try to be helpful with for our members. So with us today, Karen Seligman, who's Senior Director of the membership team based in Washington, D.C. Andras Banet, that's me. And
Jose, it's me. Hi, how are you?
Very good. So Karen, perhaps you want to say just a few words about yourself and how you help member engagement, onboarding of new members, and everything else that you do in the membership team.
Sure, thanks. So hi, my name is Karen Seligman. I'm based out of the Washington office for the Public Affairs Council, and my role at the organization is in the membership area. So I have two roles. Probably the most important one is making sure that all of our current members are aware of all the resources and services at their disposal. And then my other role is to help bring new members into the fold. And as we talked during the orientation, you'll get a better sense of the depth and breadth of our membership and the wide variety of services that we have as well. And as is the same with the European office, in our Washington office, we are very high touch. And so we want to make sure that you know by the end of this call that the Council staff on both sides of the Atlantic is very accessible to you. There is no question too large, too small, too strange. And so anytime you're not sure whether or not the Council can help, please give us a call because either we'll be able to give you the answer or to help point you in the right direction.
So perhaps one or actually two words of housekeeping. One is terminology, and the second one is asking questions. Terminology is we refer to ourselves in-house as the Council. Now, everyone who's based in Brussels or exposed to the European institutions would know that we have quite a few other councils in this city: European Council, Council of Europe, Council of Ministers, and the like. But for the sake or for the purposes of today's call, when we say Council, that means us, the Public Affairs Council. Second point of housekeeping. If you have any questions or something might be unclear or you'd like us to elaborate further, do ask those questions using the chat box, which in most computer and cell phone interfaces should be in the bottom left or somewhere at the bottom of the screen. Just type in your questions and either of us will be happy to address it. So having said that, a quick agenda for today. We're going to do just a few words of introduction about the Public Affairs Council, where we are coming from as an organization, and then we'll outline the resources and services that are at your disposal as a member, and then we'll say a few words on how you can get involved and how you can be part of the club that the Public Affairs Council is. So having said that, I'll pass the floor to Karen just to say a few words about our background and where the Council is coming from.
Thanks, Andras. So the Public Affairs Council has been around for quite a number of years. We were founded in 1964, actually at the urging of President Eisenhower, who really felt that the corporate community needed to be involved in a more substantive, meaningful, and engaged way with the government. And so from that time in 1954 to today, we have morphed to an organization of more than 700 organizational members. And because the way that the membership is structured, that if an organization joins, any employees of that organization are considered members of the council. We have about 10,000 public affairs practitioners spread throughout the world. Not surprisingly, we have a heavy concentration in the United States and North America, but thanks to Andras and Joao, we have a growing presence in the EU, but we also have Public Affairs Council members spread throughout the world. So as we're talking, I encourage you to think about making connections not only with you where you are geographically, but also connecting with other members of your team who may be spread throughout the world so that we can help connect them with the council resources and services. We're a small organization. We only have 23 people on our staff, yet they are very high functioning. We collectively put together more than 150 events throughout the course of the year. More than half of those are provided virtually, so either via webinar platform or in the cases of some of our Washington office events, they're held physically in our conference room, but they are also available to be participated in virtually. So we've really tried to make our programs and services accessible regardless of where you are. So the Council is a very unique organization. We are nonpartisan and non-political. So though many of the issues that our members are dealing with are highly charged and very sensitive, we do not wade in or take a position on any public policy issue, but rather we really see ourselves as the professional home for people working in the field of public affairs. And so that puts us in the position of being able to be the home for good ideas, regardless of whether or not they're coming from an enormous global company or a very small public advocacy group. We feel that good ideas come from lots of different places, and so we want to be the home for those good ideas without necessarily taking a position on any policy issue. It also gives us the unique position of being able to speak out on behalf of the profession and talk about the value of being a public affairs professional, often at a time when the profession or individual practitioners may be coming under fire. So we're very unique, not only in Washington, but around the world as well. Andras?
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. And I think that's very helpful to emphasize all these points where we are, so to say, an honest broker of ideas, where we do tap into all sectors and industries on both sides of the Atlantic and even globally. So I encourage all members or to-be members to look at that feature where we can find good examples, ideas in many, many places, and we're happy to share it back with the community. So having said that, you're in good company for sure, because there are, as Karen said, 700 plus organizations that are members. It's hard to say how many of these are Europeans or those active in Europe, because it's sometimes a blurry line between these two categories. But in any case, we're dealing with roughly 200 odd companies, associations, consultancies on this side of the Atlantic. So we listed a couple of European members, such as Danfoss, Henkel, we have Goodyear, we have Lego, we have even the Danish Minister of Foreign Affairs, AmCham EU, and many, many others. We have JTI and other organizations and companies. But the list is available, it's public, it's on our website. It's also grouped into industries and also grouped in alphabetical order, so you can find your peers and you can find competitors, you can find others in different sectors where you might wish to engage or find partners for your given public affairs challenge. So with that, back to Karen for a second to share a few words on the proportions of the kind of organizations that are members of the Public Affairs Council that you yourself can connect with, reach out for best practices, and network with. So Karen, back to you.
Right. Thanks. So as I alluded to before, the Council is a very unique organization in many ways, and one of them is by looking at the composition of our membership. So even though we were originally founded as an all-corporate organization, over the years we have morphed to an organization that really includes a diverse range of voices. So about half of our members are corporations, everything from the largest global companies all the way down to smaller startups. But over the years, we have expanded to include both trade and professional associations. That segment makes up about 25% of our members. We have about 20% of our members that come from the consulting world, so everything from global public affairs firms like APCO or Fleischman Hillard or Burson Marsteller, down to single practitioner firms that lobby in a specific geographic area. And then the small slice of the pie chart that you see that says non-corporate, that is really a testament to the fact that anyone is eligible to be a council member. So in that small swath, you would find organizations like educational organizations, like Stanford University, for example, is a member of the Public Affairs Council. We have labor unions, we have government agencies, we have advocacy groups. One of our most recent members is a patient advocacy group that focuses on infertility issues. So you never quite know who you're going to meet at the Public Affairs Council, and I think that's one of the unique benefits of being involved in our community, is because you probably often see people from your industry sector or from your geographic sector, but at the council you're going to be exposed to people and organizations and ideas that you might not otherwise interact with. Andres?
Yeah, just to confirm a point or two. One is that membership is always organizational, so it's an association or consultancy or corporation or company that is member. Obviously, we interact with individuals afterwards. So there could be one person engaged with our activities from an organization, or it could be dozens or even more, because it's the organization that joins, but then any number of their staff are free to take advantage of our services. Number two is I often get a question about NGOs, non-governmental organizations or nonprofits. This is, let's say, more common in the U.S. That would be in the non-corporate category. But here in Europe, we typically have corporations, associations, and consultants as members. Though I did mention the Danish Minister of Foreign Affairs, but it's rather exceptional that the government ministry would be part of us, mostly because of their trade council activities.
Yeah, and I think this aspect of the Public Affairs Council and the diversity of the community is something that we really see also here in Europe, in the roundtables, the conferences, the workshops that we organize, and we will speak about this later on in this webinar. But I think this is really something that you can see, and I think it's really one of our strong points, because it brings people together with different experiences, coming from different environments, having faced different challenges. And then perhaps by exchanging experiences and talking to each other, they realize that they can learn a lot from each other. And it's sort of the rising tide that lifts all boats. So it's something very, very interesting, and I think very beneficial to see in our activities. And I think this really points to what our mission is, that the core of our mission and of what we do as Public Affairs Council, which is really to advance the field of public affairs and provide both executives, public affairs executives, but also with organizations, with the tools that they need to achieve their goals, achieve their objectives, both as organizations, and as organizations they can be more performant and do achieve their business goals better through their public affairs work, but also as individual professionals that can better advance their careers, improve their leadership potential, and overall increase the impact of what they do, increase the impact within their own organization. Anders.
Regarding membership benefits in Europe, we like to group that into 3 pillars. I think the word pillar is pretty popular in Europe. Anyone who studied European studies would be very familiar with the concept since the Maastricht Treaty. Regarding our benefits, the 3 main elements, the 3 main pillars are on screen. So expertise, executive education, and community. So we'll say a few words about each, and as mentioned before, we're happy to take questions, or if you'd like us to go into more details, we're more than happy to do so. So in terms of expertise, perhaps that's the first I'd like to start with. There are quite a few knowledge areas where we pride ourselves to be experts on, with the caveat that even if we're not the experts ourselves, or we may not have the in-house knowledge, we have the network to know where we can refer you to. So we're happy to point you to the right person, institution, website, resource, webinar, whatever the format is. We are here to assist you. We're here to help you. We're here to find the right information or provide it ourselves directly. So having said that, the knowledge areas, I like to group that into 5 main boxes. The first one is linked to the European Union. So we're happy to help you with questions on how the EU works, whether it's on a more basic level or something more specific, such as trialogues or comitology or any other aspect which regards horizontal institutional questions of the EU. The second area would be political developments and trends. So we do quite a few events and discussions on advocacy at the EU level and member state level. Obviously, we're monitoring Brexit from a public affairs perspective. So this is not to say that we are trade experts or we go into insane detail on the backstop, still on the agenda at all. But when it comes to the impact on advocacy dynamics in the European Parliament post-Brexit, we're happy to look at those and point you to the right resources. For questions linked to lobby register questions in Ireland, again, a national level horizontal question linked to public affairs. At the same time, we also look at transatlantic relations. We look at public affairs around the world, in Canada, Middle East, Asia Pacific, which may not be us directly here in the European office, but we have our team and colleagues in the US with Dasha, who's looking at international public affairs, and obviously you have a lot of excellent and top experts with our DC team who focus on US-specific public affairs, whether it's campaign financing or lobbying, compliance, and related questions. Number 3 is perhaps the most sought-after area, which is public affairs management. So looking at PA strategy documents, management best practices, how do you coordinate a global team, what are legal, ethical compliance questions, issues management, which software you have there, what are the best practices of issue mapping, issue prioritization, measurements and KPIs, so performance indicators on public affairs, proving and providing the value of public affairs, and evaluating your work as a PA professional. The fourth is strategic and digital communication, so advocacy in the digital space. So that includes a lot of social media discussions, but even beyond that, software tools used for stakeholder mapping and logging meetings, strategic communications aspects for public affairs, so that's on the soft skill side or planning, the communication aspect of a campaign. It even includes topics such as communicating science, which a lot of organizations have challenges with, and how science and policy interact. And then the last one is stakeholders, so working with key stakeholders, NGOs, and emerging topics. So it's a little bit everything else, which does concern public affairs professionals. So that might include transparency, register issues. It might include social trends around AI or sustainability, or things related to automation and technological changes. And then a couple of new initiatives we're looking at is women in public affairs, and again, emerging issues.
Yeah, and I think there's even more than this. And you know, if in addition to these knowledge areas, those of you who follow us will know that we also do some of our activities in terms of trying to increase the soft skills and trying to help you improve the soft skills that are associated with being a public affairs professional. For example, we had recently a workshop on public speaking for public affairs. And we will have another activity soon. Again, we will get back to this later on in this webinar, but we have an activity, a workshop coming up on how to best approach, organize, and deliver in meetings with EU officials. So these are all a set of a skill set of soft skills and knowledge that is relevant and important for you to have as a public affairs professional. Not necessarily information or knowledge based, but rather on the soft skills side of the question.
A couple of typical questions that we can answer, and these are taken from real-life requests that we receive, whether through email or a phone call or any other format. And we do encourage you to file and send us questions which are in the realm of our competence areas. So how can we optimize the use and the benefits of digital tools in public affairs? How can we use visual storytelling for advocacy? Can you share examples and a couple of good ideas? What are the best practices for public affairs campaigning in Europe and the US? How to create and implement a Europe-wide public affairs plan? Can you recommend speakers for some of our events in Brussels or European countries? Or how can I measure and effectively report on our PA efforts? Perhaps one more word on another question that we do get from time to time, mostly from the corporate and association side, is recommendations for public affairs consultancies and agencies, which is something where we're happy to advise our members on, partly recommending them specific agencies and consultancies, or putting a question, usually an anonymous question, to our community and say, well, one of our members in the manufacturing sector, or just say one of our members is looking for a consultancy who has expertise in the Czech Republic. Can you recommend someone? And then members who have done business in that country would say, well, we recommend the following 3 companies and stay away from that one. So this is usually a very helpful service on both sides, because both our consultants members like it because they get referrals, and also members get helpful recommendations. And we do it as a neutral platform. We're not favoring anyone over others. We're trying to be the spider in the web where we're connecting the members for everyone's benefit. So having said that, we are also available and happy to be guest speakers for your meetings. On the picture is Doug Pinkham. He's our president, and he's often coming to Europe, which we very much like, because then we get Doug a lot of speaking engagements, either in Brussels or in other European capitals. So we do speak a lot. João and myself get many invitations and are happy to honor such invitations if you have such a need, whether it's on corporate public affairs, best practices, whether it's on social media for PA, whether it's on corporate citizenship or issue management and stakeholders, key strategic planning, managing political risk through content public affairs. and obviously tailoring it to the specific sector or industry. So I've recently spoken for a trade association in Croatia last week on European political trends and how that impacts their particular sector. And then a week before, I was doing a workshop in Malta on advocacy and communication. So this is just to give you a rough idea of the kind of things that we want to deliver. And then we do a lot of research, also from Europe, but even more in the US. And perhaps, Karen, you might want to say a few words on the next slide about our global report. But just to highlight the European ones, there is a really nice publication we're pretty proud of called Opening Doors in Brussels. So if you have a new member of your team, or you yourself might be new to public affairs in the European context, it's a very comprehensive and highly entertaining or perhaps infotaining report with great takeaways and practical insights on the Brussels lobbying scene, with many case studies and interviews with industry and nonprofits as well. We sometimes publish infographics on the various aspects of public affairs. The middle one is on how PA professionals see their role and what they were planning in the context of the EU's institutional changeover currently in 2019 when the new Commission is coming into office, the new Parliament elections happened a couple of months ago, and there's quite a bit of change in Brussels. And then there's another one on EU lobbying work, and there's one survey coming up on digital advocacy, which we're planning to publish in about 2 months before our Digital Advocacy Summit in December. And then the US side, perhaps Karen you want to say, but before that I see Joao would like to add some words. So Joao first and then Karen.
Yeah, no, I thank you, Andres. I just wanted to say that this is one of the areas in which our knowledge and the network is materialized. And I think this is, and speaking about the surveys and the reports in particular, this is something that is really interesting to our members. We have realized over the years, and speaking informally with many of our members, this is something that is really valuable to you to see how you can compare to others. What is the average of the industry and of the public affairs community in certain areas, be it in digital, be it in how you staff your team, what's the budget that organizations have allocated to public affairs or to digital advocacy. This is things that we find that yourselves and your peers find useful. And this is not really a one-way street, I would say. We have ambitious planning to continue doing these surveys here in Europe this year and next year. And if you believe that you have interesting ideas about what the community and or your organization would like to know, I would very much encourage you to reach out to us and to get in touch. And we would be happy to discuss these ideas with you. Karen, now over to you for the U.S. report.
Thank you. So as our European team mentioned, we have a number of European-specific research reports. We also have some United States-specific reports, things that look at areas like the use of political action committees, one of our funding mechanisms for American elections. We also do some surveys of the general public about things like how Americans are responding to corporate responses to crises. We've done some interesting work looking at the growing trend we're seeing here of corporations being asked to weigh in on what previously might have been called social issues, whether it's things about equity regardless of background, or it's things like even weighing in on environmental issues or other areas where corporations traditionally have not been involved. We also just came out with our Public Affairs Pulse survey earlier this year that looked at how Americans view politicians. Not surprisingly, they did not fare very well, but also looking at things like the impact of President Trump's tweets on the general public. So those general population studies are interesting, but I think where the Council is most well positioned, both in the U.S. and in Europe, is regarding our surveys of public affairs practitioners. João alluded to some of the type of information that we have, but the reason we're able to collect such rich and really sensitive data about things like staffing or budget or priorities is because the Council is so well respected, and public affairs practitioners are willing to share this very sensitive data with us, knowing that it will be safe at the Council, where we'll be able to take the data responses, aggregate them, and then share them back to the community in a way that doesn't divulge information about who has shared the information, but rather is able to distill it down to useful trends in the field. So if you're trying to make a case for additional staff or additional budget or a change in structure, we have that type of data available. And not only do we have it presented in comprehensive reports that look at all the study results, but we also have all this quantitative and qualitative information in databases that we can manipulate. So we will often be contacted by a company who says, well, you know, this overall information on budget and staffing is very interesting, but for my senior management, they will care most about looking at other manufacturing companies or other companies who have similar global turnover or other companies in our geographic area. And so what we can do with that data is that we can analyze it and look at specific questions or specific data sets that are going to be most relevant for you. So I think that's probably one of the unique value adds of your Council membership, is the ability to access that data. Andres?
Right. Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. And just to back up that point, so how to access the expertise, and that's actually the question we just got from Juan Francisco. Who to contact on a specific issue, whether it's KPIs and measurements or any other, very easy. Just reach out to us. You can send an email to our europe@pac.org email address, and we'll make sure to find it in-house who's the most relevant or the most knowledgeable person to answer a given question, and happy to help you out. But we do have a very substantial collection of expertise material. It's on a PAC.org website. A large part of it would be behind the login area, so you might want to have the access to the website as a member with a login and a password, so you can access most of this library. But if you are short on time or need more guidance, just send us an email and we'll be happy to point you to the right resource, whether it's a white paper, a tip sheet, a news article, or any other. So going to the next part of the benefits is executive education, some of which we've already mentioned or highlighted. And maybe Karen would like to say a few words about the hallmarks of our Council events before we zoom in on Europe.
Right. So I think there are obviously no shortage of events that are targeted towards public affairs professionals, some in person, some provided virtually, some provided by consulting firms, some provided by educational organizations. And so when you're trying to decide where you're going to spend your time or make an investment, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that are unique to the Council. And so when you participate in our events, the people who you are going to be hearing from are primarily other public affairs practitioners. And while we know it's helpful to sometimes hear from an academic or to hear from a consultant who has a broad perspective, often the people who you really want to hear from are people in a situation similar to your corporate or association public affairs challenges. So we do our best to have our speakers be actual practitioners or to be able to speak to very specific case studies about best practices and things that have worked well, or for those who are very brave, to talk about worst practices. In other words, things that they thought were going to work out well, they did not succeed in the way that they had hoped, but the public affairs practitioner is able to step back, talk about some of the lessons learned, and share that with the rest of the group. And while we know that you often learn a lot based on who has the PowerPoint slides and is speaking from the podium, you often will learn just as much, if not more, based on the other people in the room, so that you'll find that at all of our events, we leave ample time for networking so that you can connect with and learn from other people who are participating in the event. We make sure that the advice that we're giving is not theoretical, but rather very practical and actionable, so that when you leave the event, you hopefully have jotted down at least a few action items that you can implement once you're back in your office with your team. And we really feel that not only are you going to learn a lot during the event, but we send follow-up materials afterwards, and so you can continue your learning. And so, as you've heard all of us stress during this call, we really are quite accessible and interested in helping you learn. So the Council is here 365 days a year. Our relationship with you doesn't end once a webinar is over or once a conference is concluded and you're headed back home. So I think for any of you who haven't participated in one of our events, would highly recommend that you come and check out at least one of them, because they do look and feel very different from other events you may have participated in.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for that overview. And a lot of what Karen has said, in fact, everything that Karen has said applies to the events that we organize here in Europe. In fact, a lot of what we do, a good part of what we do in executive education here in Europe is about the roundtables that we organize, about the conferences that we organize, the workshops and others, which are some of our most visible, let's say, activities here in Europe. Two flagship events are, I would like to underline. One, the Brussels Public Affairs Forum, and two, the European Digital Advocacy Summit, EUDAS. The forum took place in May in May of this year, and save the date already for May 2020. More news about that coming soon. But it was really a great opportunity to hear from experienced practitioners in risk communication, in reputation management, in communicating and reaching out to stakeholders in an age of disinformation and mistrust. It was a full day of very insightful lessons, which indeed we hope we are going to repeat in May next year. Over 100 people attended, and we had speakers from the European Parliament, the European Commission, corporations, trade associations, and Dan Gardner, who is a well-respected author worldwide in risk communication. The second flagship event that I would like to talk about briefly is the European Digital Advocacy Summit. And if you haven't heard about that yet, I strongly encourage you to either reach out to us or look at our website. It's coming up on December 3rd, and it's really going to be a day packed with interesting and useful debates. We're going to have a morning where we're going to focus more on strategic insights and case studies about how digital advocacy is done here in Europe, and how you can best use digital tools to promote your ideas and reach out to your stakeholders. In the afternoon, we're going to focus more on developing skills, and so we're going to have a number of sessions that are going to focus on how you can increase your thought leadership using digital tools, how you can better communicate in times of crisis. And so that's going to be coming up on December 3rd here in Brussels.
Thanks for that, Joao. Let's take a brief look at the most recent and a couple of upcoming activities, so it gives you a better idea of the kind of topics we engage in. But before I go any further, I really would like to emphasize that we do wish as much as possible to be demand-driven. So we're constantly looking for new ideas. We're looking for topics and trends, which essentially come from our members, because we try to meet as many members as possible and as often as possible, whether it's at our roundtables, which is a more intimate format, or at the full-day conference, or just one-on-one for lunch or coffee or any other. So if you have a particular concern, or you've faced a challenge on an issue that you say, well, I wish I knew more about that, or it seems to be an emerging trend, say how the European Parliament is more concerned on technical matters that the Commission deals with because these technical topics are more politicized. Or you say, well, I'm facing an increasing challenge in coordinating my multi-country team around Europe, and we have very limited resources. What are the ways I can address it? Whatever the topic or the issue, do share with us. And these give us ideas on further events, or perhaps we do a study on that, or we do a webinar or any other format. These are topics we want to be discussing. So a quick look at European public affairs, for instance. João mentioned the topic of risk management. It's something we look at and want to examine further. Or measuring public affairs as a trade association in Brussels. We had a highly attended event with CEFIC, the Chemical Industry Trade Association in Brussels. Policy and regulatory topics, so Brexit, what public affairs professionals should expect. This was postponed, mostly because of all the ongoing drama surrounding Brexit, but as things stand, it's going to be, an evergreen topic, for better or worse, to be looking at. But then also topics on engagement with EU institutions. We already have 2 confirmed speakers. One is from the European Commission's Transparency Secretariat, and the other person is the Managing Director of Transparency International's EU office. And we might have a third person attending as well. So that's going to be a roundtable / panel discussion. And I believe it's on the 26th of November, João, but you'll hear more about that in our newsletters. And then communication and reputation, so digital crisis management. We had a roundtable discussion on that, and we're now planning a webinar on a similar topic. The Digital Advocacy Summit on the 3rd of December, and then issues on corporate reputation. We have a roundtable confirmed. So again, you'll hear about the exact date and location in one of our upcoming newsletters. And then quite a few workshops, so meeting and persuading EU decision makers. That's a skill building workshop, looking at skills and competencies of what makes a successful lobbyist. And then on the 4th of December, so the day after the Digital Advocacy Summit, I'll be running our biannual, or it's actually not biannual, it's not every second year, it's actually twice a year. So this semester's edition of the EU Masterclass Influencing EU Decision-Making, looking at trilogues and comitology, which I know, Karen, these are terms which might sound alien to you as ears, but Brussels-based public affairs professionals struggle with many of these aspects, and we're happy to train them on these important processes. So just a final few words on customized training. João and myself are very happy to be helpful and be available to your organization on customized trainings, whether it's on lobbying, social media, measurement, many of these topics we've discussed so far. That's yours truly on that picture. I think I was in Paris with this presentation at a business school. But as I mentioned earlier, I do travel around to deliver workshops, and these are, of course, always customized, tailored to your organization's specific challenges or the specific sector or industry in which you operate. And we often go even beyond Europe. So I'll be going to the US in November for a workshop, and João is traveling to Central Asia to run an advocacy workshop himself. So with that, perhaps Karen, you'd like to say a few words about our US-based signature events to introduce these to our audience.
So for those of you who either have travels that bring you to the U.S. or have colleagues who are based here, With probably only one exception, we have international participants in all of our events. The only exception would be the one that focuses on state and local government relations. But what you'll find in common with all these events is they tend to be larger in scale, in the order of 200 or 300 people gathering in multi-day events. But while they have a broad focus area, for example, our advocacy conference, which is going to be held in February in Las Vegas, looks at all areas of public affairs advocacy, we tend to break these larger events into more focused tracks that look at things like communications or legislative advocacy or using digital tools so that you can really customize your experience at the event based on the sophistication of your organization's program and also based on your professional experience in the field. So there are some sessions that will be designated, for example, as skill builder sessions that are designed to really get novices up to speed about best practices, whereas some of the more advanced sessions look at more sophisticated tools and techniques to advance your agenda. So I think probably of all of these larger signature events, the advocacy conference is the one where we see the most people traveling from outside the country to join us. Also, our spring executive meeting is really focused on very senior level public affairs practitioners looking at trends and issues in the field. And then also I might encourage you to take a look on our website about our Public Affairs Institute program. Unlike all of our other programs, which are designed to be ones that provide you very actionable information, giving you case studies and tools and techniques you can implement immediately, our Public Affairs Institute program, by contrast, is designed to be a mind-expanding program where you will be exposed to ideas, some of which may have direct relevance to your job, and some that may just help push your thinking overall about trends and issues in the world. So for example, the sessions that you would see are not ones that are focusing on specific public policy issues, but looking at something like bioethics or trends in global terrorism or social media. And so we bring in lecturers, sometimes professors, sometimes consultants, sometimes former elected officials who are going to talk about issues and trends that are really designed to sort of push the boundaries. And unlike our other events where you primarily are hearing from a speaker who's at a podium for a specific period of time and you have a chance to ask a few questions, these Public Affairs Institute sessions are more designed like a graduate school experience where it's most of the time is spent on discussion, not only between the lecturer and the participants, but among the participants as well. The program is also unusual because it is a week-long program, and when you apply to become part of the program, you commit to coming for 3 consecutive years. And during each of those 3 years, you will stay with your same cohort group of about 35 people, so you will, in your first, second, and third year, be with that same group. And so not only is it a very stimulating intellectual environment, but it also gives the opportunity to develop some really deep professional relationships that you can revisit year after year. So if you have any questions about those programs or frankly any of the other US-based programs, I'm accessible and happy to answer questions about them. Andres?
2 comments perhaps. One is, if any of our listeners, members, future members, if you find yourself in Washington, D.C., perhaps I can make a welcome note on behalf of you, Karen, and your team. Then do pass by our D.C. office and say hi and have a conversation with one of our team members. We're actually on K Street, which is famous or infamous, depends on your perspective, but the famous lobby street. And we're one of the very few entities there, apart from the burger joints, that actually do not have any lobby activities. But certainly many of our members are nearby. The second comment I wanted to say is, we didn't mention it before, But once you become members and basically any of your employees or colleagues can take advantage of the program, you can attend all these events as members. And many of these events have a special member pricing, and many other events, especially here in Europe, we offer for free or as part of the membership benefit. So that's an important point in terms of pricing or lack of it. We have a lot of free webinars and a wealth of past webinars, recordings that are available for members. So visual storytelling, whether it's networking for emerging leaders, it's some US-focused issues, developing grassroots programs, or even public affairs in Asia. And we ourselves have run a couple of webinars on public affairs in different member states, or even public affairs in the Middle East. So this is available and readily accessible. And when it comes to community, perhaps Joao, you want to say a few words to our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So it's as Karen and Andres mentioned earlier in this webinar, we have a network of over 700 members. So that means more than 10,000 individuals worldwide, many of them in senior level positions that are members of the Public Affairs Council and engage and are present regularly in our activities. Here in Europe, we have more than 50 events between roundtables, conferences, workshops, webinars, trainings happening every year. And these events are attended by more than 1,500 of your peers. So this means a very interesting networking opportunity for you and for your team, and a very interesting opportunity to exchange experiences and exchange views and learn from your peers. As we mentioned, we have more than 200 member organizations based or with offices in Europe with whom you can connect during our events or with whom you can connect through us. And again, if you have questions or if you would like to know more about specific topics, and we believe or you believe that it would be helpful to be connected with others, you are more than free, and we would be very happy for you to reach out to us, and we would be happy to advise you. Something that we have in Europe and in the United States, they have something very similar, is the European Advisory Group. So this is a group of senior level practitioners working in public affairs from different organizations, and they are an advisory group to the European office, to us, to Anders and myself here, and they are very helpful in terms of advising us and also bringing ideas about what topics we should focus on, what the community would like to hear more about in our roundtables, in our conferences, in our speaking opportunities or trainings, and they are a group that helps our office in this regard.
Perhaps back to you, Karen, regarding the professional network, and just a few words on our board before we finish up, and perhaps if there are other questions, we'll be happy to answer those. But Karen, if you could say a few words on the international network, especially what it actually does.
Sure. So while you have heard us talk about the value of having a big tent and having lots of different organizations and public affairs practitioners involved, we know sometimes it's helpful to connect with people who are in a similar sector or public affairs area of expertise. So we have 5 free members-only networks that focus on the specific communities or specific public affairs areas. So I think probably of greatest interest to this group are our networks on our international networks, which is designed for people with non-U.S. and global public affairs responsibilities. Our social responsibility group, which primarily looks at corporate social responsibility programs, and also our association network that is designed exclusively for public affairs practitioners working in trade or professional associations. What all these groups have in common, again, is that they're free, they are members only, They all have newsletters to keep you updated on interesting case studies and trends in the field. We also now have an online community where you can connect with other people who are in the network. But probably most importantly, there is a point of contact, a Public Affairs Council staff expert who staffs each of these. And so as you have questions either that you would like to share with the network, which each of them have several hundred members, or if you can either do that publicly, in other words, to say, for example, my organization is coming under fire from a specific NGO. Has anyone else been in a similar situation and are willing to share some feedback? Or if you would like us to post a question anonymously so that the council staff can gather information and share it back to you. We do find that these smaller groups of council members that are connected amongst the networks are very generous in sharing their time and ideas with other people who are in that same community. So if you'd like to sign up for any of those networks, you can either do that via the website. If you log into the section that says My Account, which is at the top of PAC.org, once you've logged in, and all of you have a pre-assigned username and password, which we can help you with, but once you're logged in, you have an opportunity to change those networks. But again, I've mentioned that we're very high touch. If you can't find the information or you just prefer not to have to navigate the site, you can just email us at membership@pac.org, and we'd be delighted to get you signed up for any of the networks. Andres?
Still back to you, Karen, just to perhaps introduce the board of directors and how our governance structure is before we finish up and answer the final question.
Right. So the council is governed by a board of senior-level public affairs executives. It is an unusually large board made up of about 160 people who are leading the public affairs function at council member corporations and associations and other types of groups. So for example, in this photo here, you see some of our leaders from Pfizer, from Stanford University, from AT&T, and on the far right is Doug Pinkham, who's president of the council. That large group of 160 essentially acts as a steering committee for the council, providing us guidance on where the field is going, what the council needs to do to keep up with it. But more importantly for them, it's primarily a professional networking group. We know that people who are head of function often don't take the time for their own professional development, and so we make sure to weave in lots of educational sessions with our board meetings. There is a subset of that large board. It's a 14-person executive committee that really has the distinct pleasure of delving into things like our budget and our strategic plan and does the things that a more traditional board of directors would do. We do have international representation on the board, and so if you have any questions about you or someone else potentially nominating themselves to the board, I'd be happy to talk through that process with you offline. Andres?
Thanks, Karen. Final point, do follow us on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even Instagram, which I think we launched our channel about a year ago. So do connect with us. We tend to share interesting news, especially on LinkedIn and Twitter, where you can find things that are news items and articles and events that shape the public affairs context in which all of us operate. So we encourage you to do that, and we also do that in our newsletter called Impact, which where we do interviews and in-depth analysis on certain key topics, whether it's European elections or U.S. political trends or anything similar. So I think with that, we're probably going to just leave our contact details on the screen. If you have any final questions or points you'd like to elaborate on, then do not hold back and ask those questions now. But as mentioned before, we're always listening and happy to be helpful to you, your colleagues, and your team with any of this information. So please reach out to us, get in touch. If you're not yet a member, but this was an introductory session or you're evaluating whether membership is for you, let us know. We're happy to meet up, and then we can follow up. Here's actually a quick question on membership fee for consultancies. We have our membership dues on the website, but for consultancies, the pricing usually goes whether you are below 100-person team globally, or you are more than 100 people in your organization globally. If it's below 100, with the caveat that I might get the figures not exactly right, but it's around 1,600 euros, and the 100+ consultancies are on 2,300 euros per year. So, and that again includes everyone in your organization, access to webinars, and all the membership benefits that we've talked about. But if you're working for an association, we have a very attractive pricing in Europe. It's 1,000 euros for the secretariat of the association, not your members or member organizations. And then for corporations, the pricing depends on your annual turnover. So again, get in touch with us. We're happy to have a conversation on how we can best accommodate your needs. So I think with that, we're probably going to conclude here. João, you might want to add something?
Yes, just to thank everybody for attending and reminding you that this presentation will be available. So we will be sending this out to you. So we're sure that you have our contacts. You know where to find us, how to find us. Yes, as Andres mentioned, please do reach out to us. We're here and we're eager to hear from you, to discuss, to have a coffee, and to tell you more about what are the benefits that you can enjoy as members.
And then perhaps as a final point, we have our European office here in Brussels, and you're more than welcome to pass by. This is a beautiful space where we have most of our workshops, our roundtables, and even our very webinar is being broadcast from here. So this is a place where we can accommodate you and help you and welcome you if you have a group visiting Brussels or any other need. So with that, Karen, thank you so much for being available in your morning on this Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., and here in Brussels our afternoon. So the recording will be made available just like the slides we're going to be sharing. And special thanks to Steve, our essential helper, who's doing everything in the background to make sure that our operation runs as smooth as possible. So with that, thanks for being here, and hope to see you in person. And just carry on with the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.